Hey friends, have you ever stood at the edge of what feels like the end of your entire world, heart pounding, eyes stinging with tears you refuse to let fall, only to hear a single whisper that cracks open a door you never knew existed? Picture this: the ink on your divorce papers is barely dry, the woman you built a life with for 9 long years is already turning away like yesterday never happened, and in that crushing silence, her own sister leans in close, her breath warm against your ear, and says, "Be my husband." If you've ever felt the sharp knife of betrayal, the heavy ache of loneliness, or the quiet fear that love might never find you again, then lean in right now. This is Christopher's story, raw, real, and deeply human, and I promise, if you stay with me until the very last word, you'll walk away believing that broken endings can bloom into the most beautiful new beginnings. Let's step into it together. My name is Christopher, and for 9 years I thought I had it all figured out in our quiet little house on the outskirts of Columbus, Ohio. Rachel and I had met in college. She was the vibrant art student with paint always smudged on her fingers, and I was the steady engineering guy who loved fixing things that were broken. We laughed through late-night study sessions, danced in the rain on our first anniversary, and built what I believed was an unbreakable life together. But somewhere along the way, the cracks appeared without warning. Late nights at work turned into weeks of silence at the dinner table. Her dreams of opening a small gallery clashed with my overtime shifts to pay the mortgage. We stopped talking about the future and started arguing about whose turn it was to load the dishwasher. By the time we sat across from each other in that sterile lawyer's office, signing the papers that would end it all, the love had already faded into something polite and distant. No screaming matches, no slammed doors, just a quiet unraveling that left me feeling like I'd failed at the one thing I thought I was good at, being a husband. The day the divorce was finalized was gray and cold, the kind of Ohio winter that seeps into your bones. I stood outside the courthouse, clutching the manila envelope like it was a lifeline, watching Rachel walk toward her car without even a goodbye hug. My chest felt hollow, like someone had scooped out everything that made me whole. 9 years, gone in a signature. I was 34, suddenly single, with nothing but an empty apartment waiting for me and a job that now felt meaningless. Friends had offered to take me out for drinks, but I couldn't face their pitying looks. Instead, I drove back alone, the radio off, replaying every mistake in my head. Had I worked too hard? Listened too little? Loved her the wrong way? The questions looped endlessly, each one carving deeper into the wound. That's when it happened. Just as I turned to head toward the parking lot, a soft hand touched my arm. It was Vanessa, Rachel's younger sister, the one who had always been the quiet observer at family gatherings, the kindergarten teacher with the gentle smile and eyes that seemed to see straight through people. She was 28, with the same dark curls as Rachel but a softness in her features that made her look like she carried the weight of the world gently. We had never been close. Polite hellos and shared holidays, nothing more. But there she was, standing in the chill wind, her coat pulled tight, cheeks flushed from the cold, or maybe from nerves. "Christopher," she whispered, stepping so close I could smell the faint vanilla of her perfume. Her voice trembled, barely audible over the distant traffic. "Be my husband." I froze. The words hung between us like something impossible. My mind reeled. Had I heard her right? Was this some cruel joke? Rachel's sister asking me, her ex-husband, to be hers? I stared at her, searching her face for any sign of sarcasm or madness, but all I saw was raw vulnerability, tears glistening in her hazel eyes. Before I could stammer a single question, she squeezed my arm once, turned, and walked away toward her own car, leaving me standing there in stunned silence as the snow began to fall. The next few weeks blurred into a fog of loneliness I hadn't prepared for. I moved into a small one-bedroom apartment downtown, the kind with creaky floors and walls thin enough to hear neighbors arguing. Every night I'd come home from the factory, kick off my boots, and sit on the couch staring at the blank TV. The divorce had been amicable on paper, but inside it felt like a death. I missed the smell of Rachel's coffee in the mornings, the way she'd hum off-key while cooking pasta. I missed being needed. Friends texted, family called, but I pushed them away, convinced I was better off alone. "You'll heal," they said. But how do you heal when the person who knew you best chose to walk away? One afternoon, about a month later, my phone rang. It was Thomas, Rachel and Vanessa's father, the man who had once jokingly called me son during backyard barbecues. His voice was tired but kind. "Chris, the porch railing at the old house in Cincinnati is falling apart. Rain's coming. I'm too old to fix it myself, and Rachel's, well, she's not around. Could you come down this weekend? I'll pay you, of course." I almost said no, facing that house, the memories, the family I'd lost, but something in his tone pulled at me. Thomas had always been fair, steady, the kind of man who fixed more than just porches. So I agreed. The drive south felt endless, cornfields giving way to rolling hills. When I pulled up to the familiar two-story home with its wraparound porch, my heart clenched. Thomas greeted me with a firm handshake and a plate of warm cookies, no questions asked. We worked side by side in the crisp air, hammering nails, replacing rotten wood. He didn't mention the divorce once, just talked about baseball and the price of lumber. But as the sun dipped low, painting the sky in oranges and pinks, Vanessa appeared on the porch steps, 2 mugs of coffee in her hands. She looked different, paler, maybe thinner, shadows under her eyes that hadn't been there before. We sat on the repaired railing, the wood still smelling fresh, and for the first time since the courthouse, she spoke without whispering. "I owe you an explanation, Christopher. That day. I didn't mean to shock you. I've been carrying this for months." Her voice cracked as she stared into her mug. "6 weeks before your divorce, the doctors told me I have cardiomyopathy, a chronic heart condition. It's not going away. It means fatigue, hospital visits, the fear that one day my heart might just give out. I've watched my sister drift away from you, watched you both lose what you had, and all I could think was how safe I always felt around you. You're kind, steady, the man who shows up. I didn't say, 'I love you.' I said, 'Be my husband,' because I need someone I can trust to walk beside me through whatever comes next, not out of passion or fireworks, but out of real, quiet partnership. I know it sounds crazy. I'm sorry if it hurt you more." Tears slipped down her cheeks, and for the first time in weeks, my own walls cracked. I wasn't angry anymore, just overwhelmed by the weight she'd been carrying alone. We talked for hours that evening, the coffee growing cold. She told me about the sleepless nights worrying about her students, the way her body betrayed her during simple tasks. I shared my regrets about the marriage, the nights I chose work over listening to Rachel. There was no romance in that moment, only 2 wounded souls laying their truths bare under the stars. When I drove home that night, the emptiness in my chest felt a little lighter, not gone, but shared. Months passed, and what started as careful, public coffee meetups in neutral Cincinnati cafes slowly wove itself into something deeper. We never rushed. No candlelit dinners or stolen kisses at first, just long walks along the river, where Vanessa would pause to catch her breath and I'd wait patiently, learning her limits without pity. She taught me to notice small beauties, the way sunlight danced on the water, the laughter of children in the park. I taught her that it was okay to lean on someone without feeling weak. Our conversations peeled back layers we'd both hidden, her fear of becoming a burden, my fear of never being enough again. "I don't want pity," she'd say softly. "I want a partner who sees me, not my diagnosis." And in those moments, I realized I was starting to see her, not as Rachel's sister, but as Vanessa, resilient, funny, with a quiet strength that made my own heart feel steadier. The real test came one rainy Tuesday when her condition flared. I got the call from the hospital at 2 a.m. Vanessa had collapsed at home, shortness of breath turning into something scarier. I drove through the storm without hesitation, arriving to find Thomas pacing the waiting room. When they let me in, she looked so small in that hospital bed, monitors beeping softly. "You came," she whispered, reaching for my hand. In that sterile room, surrounded by the smell of antiseptic and the fear of losing her, something shifted inside me. I stayed all night, holding her hand, telling silly stories about my worst engineering fails until she smiled through the oxygen mask. The doctor stabilized her, but the scare lingered like a shadow. That night taught me love wasn't about perfection, it was about showing up when the world felt like it was crumbling. Telling the family was the hardest part. Thomas already knew. He'd seen the way we looked at each other during those porch repairs and gave us his quiet blessing with tears in his eyes. "You've always been family, Chris. If this brings you both peace, I'm happy." But Rachel, that conversation happened over the phone weeks later. Her voice was sharp at first, laced with disbelief and anger. "My sister? After everything?" We talked for over an hour, me apologizing for any pain I'd caused her, her admitting the divorce had been as much her choice as mine. By the end, the anger softened into reluctant understanding. "If she's happy," Rachel said quietly, "then okay. Just, take care of her heart better than you took care of mine." It wasn't forgiveness wrapped in a bow, but it was enough. Family bonds, once stretched, found a new shape. Spring arrived like a promise. Vanessa's health had steadied with medication and rest, and one sunny afternoon in the same backyard where I'd fixed the porch, I got down on one knee with a simple silver ring. "I don't have grand gestures," I said, voice thick with emotion, "but I have every day forward. Will you let me be your husband, for real this time?" She laughed through happy tears and said yes before I even finished. Our wedding was small, just close friends and family in a modest garden chapel. No lavish reception, just laughter, homemade pie, and Thomas walking her down the aisle with pride glowing in his eyes. Life after that wasn't a fairy tale without clouds. There were more hospital visits, nights when fatigue kept her in bed and I'd read to her from her favorite books. There were moments I questioned if I could carry the weight. But there were also mornings waking up to her smile, weekend drives to watch sunsets, and the deep joy of building something honest. 2 years later, her condition had stabilized enough for us to plan a quiet trip to the mountains, something she'd always dreamed of. We stood on a ridge overlooking endless green, her hand in mine, and she whispered, "Thank you for saying yes to a whisper." And so, here we are. If you've stayed with me through every twist and tear, know this: heartbreak doesn't have the final word. Life can shatter you in ways you never saw coming, but in the ruins, kindness finds a way to plant seeds of hope. Second chances aren't always loud or perfect, they often arrive in soft whispers from the people you least expect. Forgive where you can, show up when it matters, and never stop believing that your broken pieces can fit into a love stronger than before. Whatever chapter you're in right now, divorced, lonely, scared, or simply searching, your story isn't over. Turn the page. Love is waiting, often right beside you, ready to whisper your name. Thank you for sharing this journey with me. Your heart deserves every beautiful tomorrow.